Warning! This podcast contains spoilers for Season 4, Episode 9 of Succession on HBO and Season 2, Episode 8 of Yellowjackets on the beleaguered Showtime Network. Hello! My name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media Podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
In this episode, market moves. It's R.I.P. to that man in Succession Season 4, Episode 9. What happens when a business titan like Logan Roy dies? We will find out. Airlock. It's Yellowjackets, Season 2, Episode 8. And if you were hoping it was going to be more hopeful than the last two episodes, you're wrong. It's a total bummer. In the best way, of course. And in Nerd Out, I'm very excited for this one. It's Maya talking about Pacific Rim. One of my favorite movies, underrated gem.
Love it. Up next, Market Moves. When I was a young boy, my father locked me into a kennel and said, "Now you're a dog." He said, "Rome, you're a dog now. Do dog things, scratch with your hind legs, eat kibble from a bowl." He said, "Hey, are you a sicko? Because I sexted Jerry, who was 1,000,000 years old. Now Mencken is feral." And Ken knows I fucked it. I guess I really fucked it. It's time for Market Moves. Yes! It's time for Market Moves, your number one source for passive income, active income, aggressive income, and all kinds of income that flows directly into your numerous unnumbered bank accounts, stashed anonymously all over the globe. We're here to talk to you now. Why? Of course, that doesn't even need to be said. Over here at Market Moves, we live by two rules. Don't pay taxes and buy drones. That's it.
That's it. All you need to know.
We're here to talk about Episode 9, Church and State of the Succession television program, Season 4, directed by Mark Mylod, written by Jesse Armstrong. And we open on the wake of Election Day. New York City and the country in general are in an uproar because of the events of election night. Protests of an increasingly hysterical nature are everywhere in the city, focused primarily on ATN HQ. Tom Whamsgans is under particular scrutiny because he is the guy who made the call. And there's a TikTok story in New York, in the New York Times, the liberal New York Times, about who made the call and how it happened and who did what. Meanwhile, preparations are, of course, underway for the great man himself, Logan Roy's funeral. Roman Roy is practicing his speech for the big energy spot. You will recall in the previous episode, he had locked down that big energy spot. Well, now he's kind of running through his lines. And guess what? He's unworried. He's unbothered. He pre-grieved.
He's chilling.
He's chilling all the stuff in the streets. He doesn't fucking care. He's looking great. He's putting on face cream. He's wearing his suits. He looks good. He's ready for it. Ken calls and says, "Hey, Rome, you know your buddy Jared Mencken, the future president of the United States? Could you get him to turn down the heat on the rhetoric a little? Maybe stop firing up the ops because it is the day of our dad's funeral and, other stuff. Just get him to chill out." Rome is like, whatever. Then Ken gets a call from Rava, his ex, and she basically says, "Hey, Ken, the city's aflame. It's scary out there in these streets, thanks in no small part to you and your family. And so I've decided to take our beautiful children, Sophie and Iverson."
Every time, Iverson.
I've decided to take Our children, Sylvie and Iverson, out of the city. Ken loses it, drives at high speed across the city to get himself in
Breaks
front of
many
Rava's car.
laws.
All types of laws, but what are laws to a great man such as Ken Roy?
Nothing.
He gets there just as they're pulling away, and he's like, listen, you can't take my kids out of the city. I'm going to get an injunction from the governor or whoever to make sure that legally you can't flee the city with my children. And by the way, what are you going to do? You're going to fucking run me over? I'm going to lay in front of your car. Is that what you want to do? And Rava says, whatever, I'm leaving. She gets in the car and leaves. First prompt, Rosie. What's Rava's problem? What's her problem?
What's her problem? What's going on?
What's her problem anyway?
Sure. Her kids are being threatened. Her young child. She might be
Everybody's
being
kids are
pushed
threatened.
by a Nazi.
Kids are small.
You know?
That's what happens.
That's what happens. They're small. They can't fight for themselves. Suddenly she
Yeah.
wants to go upstate. Can't go to Ken's racist
I see.
dad's funeral. I see. Seems
Come
very
on.
coincidental. As Ken says, she's too online. She's dumb.
I agree.
Why does she believe
I
this?
agree.
Nazis are running wild in the streets. Who cares? She doesn't care. Also,
That's
I will
right.
point out, Rava's got the best of both worlds. She's the ex-wife of a billionaire, so the anarchists hate her, and her child is Indian, so the Nazis hate her. I mean, what else? What could she want? What more? What's wrong with her?
I think it's time for Sophie and Iverson, who I'm guessing I'm kind of like, eye test measuring their age. I'm going to put them at like 12 and 13, somewhere around there. I think it's time for them to be the bigger person. I think it's time for them to show a little adult responsibility, a little, just to be the bigger person in this and say, yeah, my granddad fostered some of the worst impulses currently infecting the national body. And my dad helped elect a raving racist whose followers have attacked me in the streets. But
Yep.
for the sake of the country, I'm going to show unity right now. I'm going to go.
I'm going to go to
And
this
I know
funeral.
kids love funerals. Kids love
They
funerals.
love them. They love them. And also, there's like 500 people there. They need those extra bodies in the room. Otherwise, it's going to look suspicious. Okay, be prompt. How likely
Yeah.
is it that Ken gets custody?
0.0%.
0.
It's like zero. I mean, I first of all,
Thinks.
I have a strong suspicion that the kids are going to say we don't want a change in the custody situation. And I think the fact that Ken sees his kids like once every 6 to 8 months, maybe, leads me to believe that Rava, who is, there on the ground on the day-to-day and the minute-to-minute raising of the children, will continue in that regard, despite the fact that, like a coward, she is fleeing the greatest city on earth just because of a few bad apples running around the streets.
Few bad apples. Nothing to worry
That's
about.
it. Nothing to worry about. The fine people of the NYPD will keep them safe. Shiv then Shiv then prevails on Lucas Matson to release a statement on those pesky Indian numbers. Got to release a statement about those Indian numbers. Listen, there's never going to be a better time. The country is falling apart. Protesters are in the streets. Everybody is consumed with how the fuck did this guy Jared Mencken get elected? Is he even elected? What
Is it
the
legal?
hell?
What's going
Is
on?
it legal? Protests, counter-protests, fires, riots. Just release the Indian numbers. Nobody's going to fucking care about it.
She was
Matson,
right.
meanwhile, is like, she was right. Matson, meanwhile, is like, hey, get me in a room with Jared Mencken. I am, after all, a very tall, white, blonde man. I think as a Nazi, he would appreciate that.
Looking
And he will
Aryan.
understand. Yeah, I think he'll understand I'm someone he can work with. At ATN, Tom is, of course, dealing with a hectic news day as these protests rack the country. And he's also consumed with the fact that in that New York Times story about how the call happened, he is frankly not given enough credit for making the call.
He's like, hey, if I'm the one who made the call, look, Tom's right. He's like, if I'm the one who made the call, if I made the Nazi powerful, I want to get my Goebbels money. Where's my credit? I want people to know I am the PR person for the Nazi. I'm only getting a little one sentence in this giant 2-page spread. That's it. Why is Darwin getting all the credit?
Yeah. Fuck Darwin. He didn't even want to do
it.
Also, Tom is the wheelman. I think back right, he said, on Logan's coffin. So he's got a front right, which is like right. So that serious. Is a prime spot, folks. And so that means he's got to get out of there, got to get to the church. But of course, things are really, again, very, very busy at ATN headquarters. Later, Ken learns that his stalwart assistant since season 1, Jess, who has put up with all manner of things in service to Ken Roy, is leaving him, is taking her leave. He gets really petulant about it, and he's like, hey, you'll never get access like this again to like a thought leader or, like a business leader. And then he's like, hey, so is this about Mencken? Why? Just because it is about Mencken with your kids, and it is about Mencken with your ex-wife, and it is about Mencken with your family, and it is about Mencken in every other sphere, and the whole country. Just because it's about Mencken with everybody else, it has to be about Mencken with Jess. P.S. It's probably about Mencken. And then he closes with, you have no idea how things will turn out. It's very juvenile. You're dumb. You're being
fucking dumb. Great job, Kendall. Definitely gonna keep Jess around. And honestly, Jess has put up with so much shit. I truly cannot believe this is the straw that. I think that a key moment is when she tried to get Greg to not tell them to call it. She was like, you could just delay it for a few minutes. And he's like, well, someone's got to call it. And she's like, yeah, they're all fucked. Like, it's all about Mencken, and Jess is on her way out. And I think Kendall is starting to realize now it is all about Mencken.
That leads us to prompt number 2. What is the very best thing about working for a demanding boss who you don't respect?
I would hope in this case it would be lots of money, because the Roys are extremely rich. I hope it is that. I would also hope that Jess had taken advantage of Kendall's ego and his need to be cool to maybe get some stock options. I feel like Jess could be coming out of this in a very profitable way. I also feel like Jess, if she wanted to go more like the Jerry route, probably has some quite legit skeletons that she could unbury for the Roys. So I think not respecting a rich and powerful man is always fun. So that's a boon. But I would hope for Jess, lots and lots of money would be the best.
What do you think? And of course, the access, as Ken said. What do you think? What do you think that the access to Ken and his bipolar mania? Like Kendall Roy, a bad human being. Do you what do you think Jess is pulling down in the employ of Kendall Roy? 180? 2? You should make it 2?
I think so.
3?
There's a general rule that if you are an assistant, a PA, even for like a big person or in a bank, they generally say you'll never earn more than 60K. But we know that's not true. I think you're right. I think she's probably worked her way up to about 150 with bonuses. And it's definitely not enough, because that is fucking pocket change.
That's not enough.
For these schmoes.
Being a accessory to the destruction of the country for a 150 a year, like, I get it.
Let's get that military budget money. 800 billion.
I'd ask for more. At the church, Roman approaches Frank about coming aboard his Waystar project, whatever that may be.
He's feeling confident.
And he's feeling very confident right now. He's got the president in his breast pocket. He's about to give the big speech, the big energy spot at the funeral. And listen, he's ready, it certainly seems, to kind of help can exit stage left should Roman ascend to the pinnacle job at Waystar Royco. Greg, eager to leverage his role in crowning the new prez, is absolutely desperate, meanwhile, for an intro to Mencken. We catch up with the lady Caroline Collingwood, the mother, of course, of the siblings, Ken, Roman, and Shiv. She honestly has never been happier than presiding front pew over the funeral of her ex-husband, who she did not like.
It's the best day of her life.
She loves it.
I will just say, I believe you're about to get to this, but I believe this is arguably the power move of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When Caroline, who is a horrible person, I will say that. We
terrible
have to
human
this
being.
A lot of times,
As they all are.
As they all are. But in this moment, because she wants to fuck with everyone, she reconnects all of the side pieces and the partners and the wives, Marsha, Kerry, and her own Kerry, Sally Ann.
Sally Ann, my Kerry.
My Kerry. And she said, sits them in the front row. And we actually get, I mean, she freaks everyone from Waystar out, you know. Everyone's like, what the fuck is Kerry doing in the front row? This gives her some kind of leverage. Kerry bought a lawyer because she thought they wouldn't let her in. And now she's in this front row.
It's so funny.
So good. And we actually get, you know, I would say in any other place on Market Moves that this would be a sign of weakness. But I actually think we get a great new power cell that is born here when Marsha puts her hand over Kerry's hand and kind of reassures her after making a great joke about, she was like, well, at least Logan won't be fucking grinding his teeth tonight. None of us have to listen to that shit. I loved that. That was the power move of the episode for me. Caroline doing something maybe right, even for fucked up reasons, just once.
Shiv pulls Mattson aside and she has an idea. Pitch Mencken on an American CEO, you know, like cultural, an executive that understands the American culture, that Mencken can be a man who has deep-seated rage against immigrants, even white ones.
Even this Swedish is a people.
Move, even Swedish people. This is a move that he could potentially get behind. And so Lucas is like, it's interesting. Who should I choose? And Shiv hems and haws, or hems once and then haws once, and then eventually she's like, me. Should be me. It should be Shiv Roy. And he's like, well, you're inexperienced. You have no experience doing this, right? And she's like, yeah, but like, you know, I have the political acumen, the contacts, all that stuff I'm great with. And then Mattson's like, okay, fine. Let's assume that's the case. Aren't you with child? Aren't you pregnant? She's like, yeah, but I'm not gonna. Let's face facts. I'm gonna be a terrible mom. I am not gonna be plugged in. It will take a village to raise my child because I will hire a village. I'll be on the text with you, on the Zoom link with you while I'm having my vanity cesarean. Don't worry about it. Everybody's going to say that I'm a terrible mom, but here's the upside. Everyone's also going to say, Shiv's inexperienced. She just had a kid. It's Lucas Mattson pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to give you all the credit for everything.
Dude,
this
is
smart.
a power play.
That was
Shiv
smart.
It's extremely bleak, but it does appeal to Mattson's
very, very
sensibilities. He's into it. He was like, you're a hard ass. He's like, you're going to be misogynist against yourself. And I love it.
Yeah, that's right. The funeral begins with some Vivaldi and the coffin walk with the family in tow. And then, much to almost everyone's chagrin, Uncle Ewan bolts for the pulpit.
I was hoping.
Uncle Ewan, the neo-socialist billionaire brother of Logan Roy, who, while he often stridently criticizes his brother, is also happy to take his brother's money. He gets to the pulpit. Greg can't stop him. Shiv can't stop him. He gets up there, and he seizes for himself the Brutus spot, the coveted Brutus first speech spot at the funeral. And he says, what sort of people would stop a brother speaking for the sake of a share price? And then he proceeds to tell two quite revealing, actually, anecdotes about Logan. The first is, as children, 4.5 and 5 years old, taking their ocean passage from Europe to North America. I believe Canada at first is where they first landed during World War II, and how, because their boat lost power and was left behind by the convoy, they had to sit in silence lest their position be revealed to the U-boats. And during this time, which unfolded over numerous days, these two children just communicated with gestures and looks in each other's eyes. And Roman is listening to this, and he's quite emotional. It's clear that this is hitting him. Then the second anecdote is about how Logan came home from boarding school and always believed that he brought home polio from boarding school, which then infected their baby sister Rose, who died, and who you will, of course, remember was used as a little bit of a landmine to set up Rhea Jarrell at Logan's birthday party a couple of seasons back. Okay. This apparently, by the way, the thought that he had given his baby sister polio obviously tortured him and his uncle and aunt that took care of him. Never really tried to talk him out of the thought that he, in fact, caused his sister to die. He then closes with a denunciation of Logan's life and works. I think the important comment here is he has wrought the most terrible things, Ewan says.
It's true.
It's quite true. Your thoughts on the speech?
I love this speech. I think Ewan came through strong. I was hoping he would be there. I feel like the real power line of any of the speeches was who would stop a brother speaking for the sake of a share price. I think that's a really good one. I think he was, tough but fair on Logan. And as we will see, he did set up Kendall pretty well. Though I do think the biggest impact this speech had was on Roman, because we knew that the kids knew that Logan was scared of water. And there's that weird thing with Kendall being obsessed with water and water being this huge thing in his life, and his dad being terrified of it. And now we know why. I feel like there is a strange realization here from Roman about how his dad was a really fucked up, hurt person, just like he is, and that's kind of why he treated him that way. I don't think he was upset with Ewan. I think he believed everything Ewan said, the bad stuff, the good stuff. And if you compare that to where he was at the beginning, when he's practicing my dad was a great man, my dad was this great titan of business and industry, I feel like post Ewan's speech and the kind of revelations about Logan's childhood and also the reality of Logan's impact, Roman can't get up on stage in front of 500 people, in front of a live stream, ? That seems to be going on.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't feel like he can get up there and pretend anymore. The pre-grieving has run out.
Well, you mentioned it. It's Roman's turn. And, of course, Roman has been talking about how he pre-grieved and he's fine, he's doing great, all that stuff. And then as soon as he gets up there with his pink cue cards, he just folds humiliatingly under the weight of everything. Connor, Ken, and Shiv have to escort him from the pulpit as Rome, hysterical and whimpering like the kennel dog that he is, wonders aloud if Logan is in fact in the box and whether they can get him out. He is, I think,
normal.
I think clearly, by the way, calling back to that trauma of his own trauma of being trapped in that kennel as his family had put him in. Now thinking about his dad that way. And it's a moment, I think, that that we could use to humanize Roman, but I won't. I think, if anything, Roman deserves this and much more. Ken then takes the wheel and he acknowledges that Ewan, in Greg's words, has a strong take about Logan, but it was right. He was a brute, very tough guy. Then Ken transitions into a pretty strident defense of him, like as Logan is a man of action, he's a doer, he was full of life. I hope that, that vim and vigor of life is in me, because otherwise this world will be, peaceful and in harmony with all the kind of like plurality of different races and creeds and everybody, being able to coexist in a, at times, fractious civilization, but one that is essentially nonviolent and able to adhere to the tenets of a democracy. And that would be super boring. We want blood in the streets.
Capitalism,
we want fire.
Capitalism.
Yeah, like that's what we are.
We need
for.
Money. It's gushing out of orifices. The blood of life.
Shiv gets up, and she starts with a small anecdote about how Dad yelled at the kids to be quiet, when they were playing around outside of his study, and then she transitions to a really hard, kind of like actually hard to follow and hard to parse, but also tearful goodbye, where she says, goodbye to my world of a dad. Prompt number 3, power ranking the speeches. We got Ewan, we got Ken, we got Shiv, and we got Connor's long speech that we don't hear. Who are you?
I was absolutely praying with every fiber of my being that Connor would get up after Roman. There was a moment when he thought it was time. His formalist, experimental speech.
It's like James Joyce's Ulysses. Like we're playing with the
They're going to be playing with time, Jason. Yeah. Like, don't you know? Like, going to see how it goes. That's one of the things Willa likes most about it. And she is a playwright.
She's a playwright.
I wish we had heard Connor's speech, but it's also perfectly apt that he is the one who doesn't get to speak. Power rank the funeral speeches. Roman, you're at the bottom. That's going to end up decimating you. Sorry. We knew it was going to happen. There's a perfect moment that is coming up that everyone saw coming.
Yes.
If you've ever had to deal with a Jared Mencken, you're done.
Yes,
your
absolutely.
Political capital, your space in the industry.
You have shown weakness.
How dare you have an emotion as a male in this industry? You're in trouble.
Don't do that.
Shiv, next. I think you're right. It was a very revealing speech, like when she kind of kept calling Logan terrifying. I think that spoke to how the kids really feel about him. She tried to go for some of that Kendall like recognition of who her father really was. I think if she'd have just gotten up there and said the line, "Goodbye to my world of a father," that could have been a very high-ranking power speech, because that really did speak to like the immensity of Logan. But it's a bit too woolly. I think you're right. Hard to pass. It's hard for me. Coming out of this, Kendall is probably number 1. Only because he wants to be. He will use this to leverage himself. He got an ovation. People were clapping for him. He seemed to balance the truth of what Ewan said and managed. In that way, Kendall is number 1, because I think Ewan's speech was more powerful, and I love Ewan, and I love to see him out there just chatting mad shit on his brother. I was really hoping that was going to happen. But the reality is Kendall was able to use that speech that broke Roman to leverage himself into a position of, this is my dad. I'm giving this like eulogy forever that will be remembered, and people will be like, oh, he was a really great orator. He did that off the dome. Like he didn't even have notes, So I think Kendall does end up number 1. My headcanon number 1, Connor. I believe if he got up there and he did a 25-minute speech, everyone would be like, oh my God, make him president. Like, this is it. He changed the way we write speeches. He's got a job as a speechwriter for Jared Mencken. The world would change, but we never saw it. So that's my ranking.
I am going to go Roman number 1, because I love the drama. I just love drama. It wasn't necessarily a speech per se, but it's very dramatic. It was emotional. I love. Might be the most remembered. It certainly is going to be very popular on the social media platforms coming up. And I think anytime I get to luxuriate in the heartbreak of another human being, I have to do it. That's one of
joy.
That's one of the things we really, really enjoy here on Market Moves. Number 2, I'm going to go with Connor, ghost written by Willa, of course, the non-formalist speech.
Standard.
I think look for Willa to be somewhere up there, pretty high up in the communications department for President Mencken. I think, listen, Mencken likes to say very strident and strong things about the country, but like, wouldn't it be cool if that was done in a really artistic, kind of like non-linear way as well? Then I'm going to Ken, like a great vanilla speech. It did what it needed to do, followed by Shiv, who I'm going to put last, because, where's the numbers? Where's the facts? Where is the celebration of her
Too
dad's
emotional.
strength and vigor? Where were the metaphors about like what a virile man he was? Too emotional. Ultimately the emotion got to her. Also a Democrat, so I'm putting her last. Okay.
Fair.
Next, we go to the cemetery where Logan will lie in eternity in a mausoleum built by the CEO of Pets.com.
$5 million. Great deal, as Kendall says.
A great deal.
Great deal. It's a steal for $5 million.
Ken learns that Mattson and Shiv are going to run the old American CEO play with Mencken.
Classic
so
play.
He tells Hugo to we need to prepare the ground for this. I need you to float a news item, anonymously, of course, that the family, certain members of the family, are against the Gojo deal because the price is too low. And he tells Hugo flat out, listen, here's what it is. I'm going to show you my dick. I want to kill the deal. And if you want to help me, you can. But here's the deal. You're not a collaborator. I don't ever want to know what you're thinking, you're a fucking yes man. You're a dog. But, quote, the scraps from the table will be millions. Millions. Happy? To which Hugo replies, woof woof. I'm glad that
delivering.
Delivering. And I'm glad that finally, it's out there that this is what the world is.
This is how it is, man.
This is how it is, man. You got a problem with it? What if we pay you? You have a problem with it? What if we don't pay you? Either way, I could decide
still gonna
to
have
pay
a problem.
You or not pay you. You're still going to have a problem. And it's your problem, not mine. At the reception, Ken corners Colin. You'll recall, of course, Colin, the bereaved former bodyguard of Logan Roy, who was once also Ken's pursuer because he knew that untidy little fact about Ken that he killed a guy.
Just accidentally. It wasn't really his fault, He
killed a guy. He did kill a guy. That guy is no longer alive. Right. He's dead now. And Colin knows it. And Colin has been talking to a therapist because he's very, very stressed. He, of course, has this knowledge that Ken has, taken a life. And his protector in Logan Roy is gone, and he's probably out of a job. And Ken flexes by letting Colin know, hey, I know you've been seeing a shrink. That's very alarming. Mm-hmm. that the son of your boss would know that you're seeing a therapist. That's not great.
Very threatening.
But very, very, very threatening, and not a subtle threat at that. But Ken then comes, there's the stick, here's the carrot. Come work for me. Come talk to me. You want a shoulder to cry on? You want to put your feet up on a couch? Well, you can do that metaphorically by driving me around and being my bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
Ken then approaches Mencken about, that Gojo deal. You're going to kill the Gojo deal, right? Because we declared that you're the president. And Mencken, very troublingly, is suddenly very, very wishy-washy about this deal to kill the Gojo deal. And he's also, by the way, clearly enjoying the fact that he, as president, has a relationship with the electorate, a.k.a. ATN's audience, that maybe Ken doesn't quite have. He says, oh, I thought you were the sound system. Now you want to choose the track. And he says, about the deal, I've always said I'll help. But before they can really get down to brass tacks, Greg comes over. And then Connor comes over pitching what did he pitch? A Habsburg. So like
it's like a US equivalent for the EU.
Right, but it's it's a Habsburg something or other, which is just like, okay. And then Mencken mocks Roman for crying over his father's corpse. And that is the moment where you know that Jared feels like he is not beholden at all to any promise he made to the Roy family, because they showed their belly. Roman showed his throat like a little puppy dog. He laid down and then lifted his legs to show that little pink belly, and his tail is thumping on the ground, and he's got maybe a little rawhide bone in his mouth, and he's saying, "President Jerry, will you pet my belly?" And Jared Mencken is disgusted by this, as he should be.
No, he's like, he calls him tiny tears. He is making all kinds of insults, and I have to say, this is a great moment for me, because you've had this very interesting switch in Kendall, which I personally do think was probably Jess was the straw that broke the camel's back. But Kendall comes out of that funeral and he thinks he's a killer. He's the killer Logan always wanted him to be. He's threatening people. He's getting bodyguards to work for him. He's telling Hugo, "You're my dog," like Roman was my dad's dog.
Yeah.
And then he thinks he can do that to Jared Mencken. Thinks, one, he thought he could trust a Nazi. Stupid. Two, he goes over and he thinks he's doing something really tough, and then all of his annoying male relatives come over and just make it look like, it just looks like Kendall was trying to do what they were doing. Like, he just looks just as ridiculous as Connor. He looks just as ridiculous as Roman. He looks just as ridiculous as Greg. He is nobody. And then we get that ultimate, big fucking boss move from Shiv that's just so perfectly timed
to pull him away. But before that, let's get to prompt number 4. You saw how Mencken, who is a born bully, treats someone who is weaker and less powerful than him, or has shown himself to be weaker by showing emotion, the kind of emotion that, like, say, a son might show at the loss of a parent. That leads us to prompt number 4. People who are weaker and less powerful than you, what gives?
Why would they do that? How could they?
What's their issue?
You're telling me you're less powerful than a Nazi president. Oh, so bad. Oh, it must be so hard for you. Your dad died and you're crying at his funeral.
Give me a break.
Come
Enough.
on. Your dad was abusive to you and now you're crying. He's gone. Get over it.
Gone.
It's been what? It's been 7 days since he died? Come on, get over it.
On. Stop it. Take your millions and take them up and tear them into little Kleenex pieces and dab your eyes with them and get back to work, because that's what this country
earn
needs.
me some money. What do you think this is?
Finally, what do you think this is? A handout factory? You think this is? You think this is? You think this is like a soup factory? Finally, Shiv pulls Mencken away to talk to Lucas, and they make their pitch.
Perfect
American
timing.
CEO. American CEO who understands values, and it's Shiv. And then Shiv makes sure that Mencken knows that, listen, whatever my personal political views are, I don't give a fuck about them, because
I have
ATN
no
viewers
morals.
love you.
Come on.
I have no morals. I told a sexual abuse victim to just shut up and take the money. And
take the
I'm
money,
willing
babe.
to do that on a massive scale, on a
Every day.
nationwide scale, every day. I know that ATN's viewers love you, and let's face it, we need them, and so we're going to give them as much Mencken as they can take. What do you say? And Jared Mencken seems to buy this. He's fine with it. I think he likes the fact that a Democrat would bow to him.
Yes.
A supposed liberal.
I think he loves that. And I also think in that moment, he respects Shiv and Mattson don't fuck around. They don't try. Ken was doing all this amorphous, analogous, like, are you gonna help me when I helped you? I buttered your bread and now you gotta give me the jelly. Mattson and Shiv are like, if you do a deal with us, we'll just support you for like years.
That's right.
But you have to let the deal go first. Shiv and Mattson. Now listen to this, business listeners who care about business and doing important business deals. They want from Mencken something he can give them first. That was the big mistake Roman made. They gave Mencken what he wanted immediately.
Without,
if they'd have held out,
that's right. No
if
leverage.
they'd have held out, if they'd have even recorded a phone call where he agreed to it so they could threaten him with quid pro quo. And yet they didn't. So Shiv and Matsson, if Mencken helps them push the deal through, they will have gotten that, and then they can either welch or kind of navigate that deal as it comes. But Shiv's made it clear she doesn't care. She'll support him. She'll be wearing a little ATN, pro Jared Mencken t-shirt. She's going to be calling her baby Jared. As long as she gets that CEO position, she's in. She's all in.
Outside in the streets, protests are growing. It's getting a bit Tiananmen out there, Tom says to Shiv, a reference to something that happened in history. I forget what it was. Then, quite belatedly, he apologizes to Shiv for not being there, for the funeral and for when her dad died and all the stuff. And then he says, by the way, I was the first person who got to kneel next to your dad's dead body and say goodbye, and that was a lot. And he kind of breaks down a little bit, although you don't see the tears. And next thing you know, the on again, off again, weirdo toxic relationship is trending on again.
It's trending on, especially when Lady Caroline comes over and congratulates them on Shiv being pregnant.
That's right. Then Shiv gets a call from Matsson. It's a yes, he says. Now, this brings us to prompt number 5, and potentially the biggest prompt of the show's history. It's a yes from Mencken. It's a yes from the board. What is the yes? Who is the yes?
I think, using all my business acumen that I have gained over many years of being a rich business person, I believe it's Mencken. Because Ken is still very much trying to control the narrative of the board. And we know that Shiv has not approached Frank. Shiv has not approached Carl. Shiv has not been playing the Hugo game. The board aspect is what Ken is trying to play. I think Jared was very impressed with their little pitch. He likes the idea. He can see the way that the tide is turning, a.k.a. Kendall and Roman are the useless brothers, which many of us knew.
That's right.
And he is now ready to make this deal with the devil. He gets a white woman to stand in this place. He can say it's a inclusive, open, democratic space.
Yeah.
I mean, she worked.
Of course it is.
She worked for stunt double Bernie Sanders.
She can have it all.
How could you question
because
it?
She's a woman.
You can have it all.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think
she's gonna lean
in. She's gonna lean in. She'll call us out. She's gonna hold us accountable. And
this is her fight song.
Jared's people very quickly called Matsson and said, absolutely. And also, let's be real. I think that old, Alexander Skarsgård Matsson, I think he was right. I think Jared probably liked seeing a weird 6'5" Aryan guy saying, I'll do whatever you want. There's multiple layers to this, but I believe it was Mencken.
I think the pitch too about tech and social media and the fact that Gojo understands that world in a way that people who've been involved with cable news for the last several decades don't really understand it. That's a growth industry. As Matsson himself has said, cable news, ATN, that's for 60 and 70-year-old angry retirees. Like, this is not a growth business. And I think his pitch that, hey, we know social, like, that's a place for you to have international reach, not just reach within this country, but growing international and cultural reach. And I think that was a big deal. I think that turned his head. So, I think it is Mencken who gave the yes. Ken and Rome see Shiv taking this call and glowing across the room. And Ken is like, I think we're in trouble with Mencken. I think we need to fix this. And Roman's like, no, what? Mencken would not stab me. Why? Why would he do that? He wouldn't.
He's a trustworthy guy.
He's a trustworthy guy. Me and him, we're tight. We're so tight. What are you talking about? And Ken is like, I'm sorry, but I think that's happening. And then he says, and you want to know why it's happening? Although he doesn't really make the connection that concrete, but he basically says, well, it's, you did fuck it up, the funeral speech. You did lose your shit. You fucked it. You fucked it with Jared. And Roman knows it's true. It's true. He knows. And then Ken says, we have to get real and fight Shiv at the board. And of course, Ken has a plan. And he needs Roman, much like Hugo, to be his little dog and the little dog carrier, and to help him fetch papers and fetch his slippers and then lie quietly at the foot of his chair. Meanwhile, video of Roman's lachrymose speech is already circulating the
Record
internets, as they say, boosted by the Gojo algorithm, I'm sure. And it's not great. Carl and Frank are watching it. Jerry's there. And, of course, Jerry and Frank, because they are, more or less decent human beings, are like, oh, we shouldn't be watching this. And Carl is like, oh, but it's out there. We got to watch it. We have to watch it.
It's our
Roman,
duty.
in despair, brought to his lowest point from his highest point. Earlier in the day, he was about riding as high as any Roy could possibly be. And now he's essentially finished it. He's in his brother's words, absolutely fucked it. The video of him weeping is circulating the globe. Dick pics, are soon to follow, I'm sure, to be out there. And Roman, in despair, goes out to see the protests. He sees the protesters running down the street, and he starts berating them. And then he jumps over the police fence that separates them from the crowd, and he starts berating them again. And next thing you know, Roman is beaten and bloody on the pavement.
Okay, final prompt. How long has it been since Roman got punched? Because I feel like he's someone who hasn't been punched enough. And I feel like this was like maybe the first time he took a punch that wasn't from his dad.
Yeah, not counting from any of his siblings. I'm going to say that, what is Roman Roy? Probably like 37 or 38. I am going to guess that he has not been slugged for 20 years.
I agree.
Yeah. Let's go down the Roy family. When's the last time that Ken has been punched?
I think Ken has been punched in the last 2 years at least. Because remember, he's going out, he's smoking crack, he's getting into shenanigans, he's going to a bar, he's hanging out with people who probably get sick of his shit a lot quicker than the rest of them. So he's probably taken more hits than I feel like Roma's been relatively coddled aside from the child abuse.
I think that's right. And of course, Ken did take a pretty hard hit when his forehead hit the steering wheel of the car that the young man that he killed died in. Connor Roy. When's the last time Connor Roy has been punched? Now, he may have. I think he might have Secret Service protection now, so it certainly has not been in the last
I
calendar
feel like
year,
Connor,
maybe.
I feel like Connor probably can talk his way out of many situations. Not because he's particularly good at it, but because you would just get bored. You'd be like, please stop talking. I'm not even going to get into this. He's also very tall. So I think Connor, I think he might be running in along not punched. Also, we do get an interesting insight into the secret closeness that Connor had to Logan this episode that hints to me he also probably never even got a slap from Logan because he was the only one who knew about the Pets.com CEO mausoleum existed. Right. He's like the only real child because he wasn't seen as a business threat. Logan almost just let him in on the ridiculous shit that he was up to.
I think that was clearly the case where Logan was like, here's something that you can handle. Will you close this deal for my mausoleum?
Also, final grim power play by Logan because the mausoleum did have space for the family. He was like, you bitches are going to be trapped with me.
You're going to enjoy it. And then finally, Shiv Roy.
I hate to think about it, but I reckon she's almost as recent as Kendall. Her relationship with Tom is very bad. I won't allege that Tom is a wife beater, but I believe Shiv has gotten herself into some very bad relationships. And she also chats a lot of shit. And as we say in England, chat shit, get banged. So I'm sure she's had problems. I believe it's a problem.
It's a little bit of a trick question because a couple of episodes ago, of course, Tom did flick her earlobes saying that they were thick like barnacle meat. And we're going to count it.
One of the best insults.
We're going to count it. Folks, up next, Yellowjackets.
We are stepping out of the airlocks and into the still mysterious, where is it? We don't know, wilderness of Yellowjackets. We don't know. Just some snowy place. Yellowjackets Season 2, Episode 8, with the perfect name, It Chooses, directed by Daisy von Scherler-Mayer, and written by Sarah L. Thompson and Liz Fang. Oof. We begin. After Shauna's physical therapy session that ended last week's episode, aka when she beat the shit out of Lottie.
Yes.
Because, she was upset that her baby died, so understandable. But probably not a great idea. Beaten and bruised, Lottie she's pissing blood. She's being cared for by an ever-useful Misty, but also, do you really want Misty to be the one caring for you? Mari, who is one of Lottie's number one followers, is kind of putting on a sassy front, complaining a lot, but secretly she's absolutely devastated. But adding more fuel to our fire about the potential parallel timelines, Lottie, whose face is just absolutely decimated and she's struggling, she seems to be having visions from both the past and the future. She sees future Lottie. She sees future Lottie holding the Queen of Hearts card. She sees these flashes. And just before those iconic credits begin to roll, we actually get one of the most brutal and grim reveals of this season, which is that Akila's little mouse friend, one of the few bright spots of the show, her little bud, been keeping her going. Ty leans over to Akila and says, who are you talking to? She's like, go away. R.I.P. to that mouse, because the mouse is dead and maybe has always been dead. Because it's mummified.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. to that mouse.
Looking not good.
No. Mouse jerky? Maybe? But no, not good. And Akila's pretty upset. That is one of the most shocking reveals yet in Yellowjackets. The cute mouse was always dead, maybe. At Camp Greenpine, adult Shauna is not having really much of a better time than teen Shauna as she tells the others that the police have found the dismembered body of Adam Martin. Guess somebody didn't listen to Misty's instructions, or else they wouldn't have been able... Maybe then they wouldn't have been able to identify him, but, whatever. Misty, Ty, and Nat tried to convince...
I will say, they did a pretty thorough job, nonetheless.
As we see, that is a good point. And also, they identified him through a means that they would not have been able to know about. So you make a good point. They did follow Misty's rules. They did a horrific job, as we will learn later. And
disgusting job.
Disgusting. And Misty, Ty, and Nat tried to convince Shauna, like, don't go back and see Callie and Jeff. You need to stay here. We need to talk about this. You made us an accomplice in a murder. Remember that. And Van is like, fuck all of you. What's going on? Throws Shauna's keys into the forest and says, we are not going anywhere until we have a little bit of a group therapy. So off to the sharing shack they go. Time to do some sharing. But before we get there, the camera is getting blurry in Yellowjackets. Don't worry, not your eyes. It's just a cool cinematography effect to let you know everyone is starving. It's getting to that time now. Everybody's feeling wobbly. Ty is seeing nighttime Ty in the daytime. Van is sneaking around looking suspicious and offering up belts to be stewed into soups because they are that hungry.
It worked for Charlie Chaplin. Or shoes, anyway.
I'm like, you're going to eat a stew made of leather? Maybe you are. They're getting really hungry and they're in the wilderness. Can you see where this is going? I wonder. Cannibalism, remember it? Tensions are rising and everybody's kind of already plotting on eating Lottie's still warm and absolutely not dead yet body. Nat starts to wonder whether Lottie's death could be a good thing. Which makes sense, seeing as everyone is turning to Lottie's supernatural side, even young Harvey. Young, logical Harvey. He's even been praying to a specific symbol tree, which Natalie finds worrying. when she shares that with Coach Ben, her only logical friend left, the newly awakened and no longer disassociating into history, Coach Ben, takes a different lesson. This is not something good for the group. I mean, like, Lottie dying, who cares? What was that about a tree? Javi's been visiting a strange tree and bowing to it. Could that be where he hid for all those months?
I mean, it's just a simple straight line take. Hey, where's the tree?
Where's the tree?
You could hide inside of it.
Maybe I could hide in a tree so you guys don't eat me. Maybe.
Yes.
That's a pretty good idea, honestly. I understand. And once again, in epic Coach Ben timing, remember, he avoided Jackie's cannibalistic feast. It's a good time because the girls are losing it. Mari is seeing blood seeping from the walls. Ty can hear the dripping. It's all going horribly wrong. And speaking of horrific visions, Yellowjackets is a really great show. We love it for many reasons. But it is, at its heart, a horror show. I will say season 2 has kind of felt like it's veering away from that a little bit because of the supernatural elements, the survivalist elements. But we get such a horrible scene here. After Jeff, poor lovely Jeff, he suffers from a true night terror that is instigated by Kevin Tan and our worst enemy on the show, M. Saracusa, the worst cop in the whole of Yellowjackets. They show up and they're like, hey, this is like a really normal thing that cops do actually do, which is, I'm just going to show you some horrible images of a decapitated and chopped up dead body. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Would you like to see it? This is where a very sharp knife cut through somebody's limbs. Enjoying that image? Ugh. Looks delightful.
Yeah.
It is very horrible, and I will say, as we, the audience, know that Shauna did cut that body up, it adds a little bit more context to the choice that the women made when they decided they were going to get rid of the body. It is very grotesque. But you know what? These cops don't know Jeff is an accomplice. They could just be showing this to an innocent man. They don't know nothing. Jeff is understandably very upset. And later, he is at home and Shauna arrives back from Camp Green Pine and he's so happy to see her. And as usual, it's Shauna, so she's incredibly horny and they're making out. But dun, dun, dun. She has electric turkey carvers for hands.
You know she's horny because it's the worst possible time to be horny.
Exactly.
Why
are you horny right now, Shauna? Please.
Yeah.
Like, not
now.
The police have found your lover's dead body. Don't be coming home and kissing me up. And then don't be chopping me with your turkey carver hands that you have apparently replaced your real hands with because your life is so boring that you need some excitement by adding turkey carvers to your stump arms. It was truly horrific. Surprising no one, it was also a dream. But Jeff probably having some issues, I feel like, at this point, accepting. Okay, how likely do you think it is, as we head into the final episode of this season, that Jeff is going to turn on Shauna and shop her to the cops to protect him and Callie?
I don't think that he ever gets there unless something else like, a friend of a friend dropping a clue to the police department adds some extra pressure. I don't think he'll ever turn on her without something outside acting on their relationship.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's scared, but I don't think he's that scared. I think he does truly love Shauna in a very all-encompassing way that's quite defined by loyalty. In Lottie's sharing shack, talking about loyalty, the truth is coming out. Shauna reveals Jeff knows about the crew killing Adam. And when Ty, classic Ty here, just saying, tries to act like high and mighty.
This is a lot to reveal.
This is like one of the funniest scenes, because if you were doing like a speed recap, you wouldn't believe that all of this happens in like one sequence. So Ty does a classic situation. She's high and mighty. Oh my God, Shauna, how could you do that? How could you reveal our secrets to your loving husband? And Misty's like, remember when you revealed all of our secrets to a PI called Jessica? who came and offered us hundreds of thousands of dollars to write a book about being in Yellowjackets just to test whether you could trust us or not. And everyone's understandably pissed. And Van, as the kind of outsider, makes a really good point. She says, well, how do you know this is a safe situation? And Shauna's like, yeah, what if she goes rogue, you know? And Misty says, don't worry, I murdered her. I took care of it. And the best thing is, like, nobody's surprised.
No, nobody even blinks at this. Well, there's been so much crazy information already revealed in the sharing shack, like in the 2 minutes before this, that like that Misty killed another person is definitely not a shock.
Yeah, and as Misty says, you know, you're welcome, because guess what? I took care of it as useful. And then Shauna's like, well, this is crazy because you know that not only that, but the FBI has been going around to Randy asking questions about, you know, Natalie. And Natalie's like, what? And Misty's like, nah, don't worry. That was actually me and my boyfriend. We were the ones, we pretended to be the FBI so we could find Natalie, you know, as you do. And then Misty's like, wait a minute. He was actually very upset and worried about something. And he mentioned your husband, Shauna. He mentioned Jeff. So what could that be about? And it finally comes out that Jeff and not Adam was the blackmailer. Unbelievable reveals.
And honestly, a good reason for not telling them, because she was afraid that, you know, that they might murder him.
Yeah, and they're like, how could you say that? And Van's like, Misty did literally murder someone she thought was the blackmailer. So, and then, you know, it's quite the time in the sharing shack. I mean, who could know that so many truths were about to come out? Back in the 90s, you know, teen Misty is on Coach Ben's suicide watch, but she doesn't need to worry because he's not sharpening the machete to do any harm to himself. Just to adapt his crutches for the snowy weather so he can make an escape into the wilderness, which obviously keeps secret from his stalker Misty. While the group begins to hallucinate from hunger, Nat is being quite kind as always, and she makes some gloves for Harvey, which leads to this sweet moment where Travis makes peace with her and says, I'm sorry for ever making you think that you weren't a good person. Like, I take that back, and you are a good person, and you'll definitely never do anything in this episode to make me feel like that will change because you are a good person. While Lottie wastes away with a fever in the attic, it's not looking good for her. She tells Misty that the girls have to eat her if she dies. She's like, look, if I die, don't waste it. I didn't die for nothing, guys.
Can I ask an important question? Does she even need to say this?
No.
They're starving out here.
They would do
like, they would do it in a heartbeat.
Lottie's like she's like, I'm just going to assuage them of any guilt. Like, they don't need to have a question. I'm telling them. That's, you know, some people want to be cremated. Some people want to be buried. Some people want to be buried at sea. I want to be eaten by my friends in the wilderness. So she just lets them know. And that will go on to inspire a very fateful conversation within the group. But first, an interesting thing that we learn about Walter here. He is apparently a multimillionaire. That wasn't a weird lie that it seemed like it probably was. And he lives in a very impressive, beautiful house with full floor-to-ceiling windows. And what's he up to? He's just doing a puzzle, drinking Baileys.
Yeah, that's it.
Just enjoy.
On the internet, as one does.
As one does. Listening to Not While I'm Around from Sweeney Todd, the lyrics of which say, demons are prowling everywhere, plays through his, you know, his Bose speakers, I assume, some very Bang & Olufsen expensive speaker system. And when he sees that Adam Martin's body has been found on his beloved Reddit true crime boards, he sends a message to the local police force saying he has information about the murder. So, big question. Is he snitching on Misty, or, as the lyrics play when he sends the email, no one's going to hurt you while I'm around, is he planning to cover up for Misty? What do you think?
I think it's some version of cover-up that may include incriminating people around Misty. But I think he is trying to throw the police in a different direction. And I think that he's then going to go to Misty and say, hey, look what I did for you.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with you. I think that is the case. I also think there's a very interesting duality with Walter where I still have this theory that potentially he could be connected to Crystal in some way, and maybe what he wants is to get the police off Misty's case so that he can kind of deal with her and get his vengeance. But I also just like the idea that they're just like two sociopaths who are going to fall in love. Hannibal is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I love murder boyfriends, murder girlfriends, murder any kind of gender partners. So
Yes.
I like the idea that him and Misty could just become like weird murder vigilante boyfriend and girlfriend. So I'm on your side. I do believe that he is trying to put them off her scent. And interestingly enough, as he leaves his house, he grabs a purple coat. So this offers another question. Is he already part of Lottie's crew? Probably not. Or is he headed to Camp Green Pine and trying to blend in with those followers?
I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go there and he might believe that she is imprisoned there or whatever the case may be, but he's going to sneak in. I 100% believe that.
So speaking of sweet people doing things to protect the ones they love, Jeff has had his terrible night terror. He's seen Shauna with scary turkey carver hands. Let's be specific about the weaponry. And he shares some home truths with Callie, who's up drinking a beer. Scandalous. You know, she's only 18.
She's in high school.
She's in high school, guys. She's drinking a beer, trying to go to sleep.
Flirting with adult cops.
Every time. And he shares Shauna's most terrible loss from the wilderness with his daughter that he knows about. We learn here, maybe because he read the journals or maybe because Shauna told him. He knows that Shauna lost a baby. And Callie is deeply moved by the reveal. It's clear that this is also very tied to why Jeff is so loyal. Is his loyalty waning? We kind of touched on this. He seems to, at least I feel like, be considering what Kevin was saying. Kevin Tan, you know, the cop who slept with Natalie, by the way, also seems problematic. Seeing as she's involved in this case, him and M. Syracuse are really doing the most.
Yes.
When they came to the house with the search warrant, didn't find anything, it seems, but, you know, showed Jeff those scary images. He definitely seems to be considering the idea of, I could protect Callie. He says to her, this isn't your burden to bear. But it's unclear. I don't think Callie would go along with that. She has turned from being like one of the worst characters in the season who was always doing crazy, annoying shit, and ended up like she really has found this weird anti-hero kind of space for her mom in her life. Speaking of which, I'm going to give you, Jason, a giant we were right, because Shauna does a monologue.
Oh, yes.
She does a literal monologue admitting that she is just obsessed with blowing up her life. And she just can't stop making things worse. She can't stop. She wants the chaos. She even says she had the affair with Adam because she wanted to mix things up. And then ever since then, she says, I've been trying to fix it. And then she's like, no, I haven't. I've actually just been trying to make things worse. Everything I do is making things worse. And I was very impressed because you called that shit from the very beginning of this season about that being like Shauna's driving force is this kind of chaotic void that she just constantly wants to blow up her suburban life.
She gets off on the chaos. It's exciting to her. Something about just normal relationships, normal living is boring and isolating and entrapping to her. And she needs to break free. And the only way she can do that is by doing crimes, by doing adultery,
crimes,
by committing murders.
Yeah, and then chopping people up.
Who among us? Yeah.
Who among us has not committed a murder when we're just feeling a bit bored?
Yeah, who among us has not decapitated and the corpse of the person you were having an affair with so they cannot be identified, then cut off the hands and then cheese grater the tattoos off? That's just what you do.
It's very relatable to cheese grater someone's tattoos off. You don't want that to be there. That's a signifying mark. Come on. Shauna's honesty inspires Natalie to encourage the others to open up, which, by the way, I still think Natalie is playing some kind of long game here. Just not sure what it is at this point. But sad times to see it because she's really been struggling this season. Lottie takes the reins, goes against what Natalie was saying, which is very interesting because she's kind of been preaching this idea of therapy and talking their problems out. And she's like, no, none of that's going to help. Talking won't help. we are here for a reason. And the reason is the power of the wilderness. And I know what it wants. Cut to the wilderness in the 90s, where we're about to learn what Lottie thinks it wants. Lottie has offered her body up for the good of the group. The survivors, in a very interesting and telling conversation, they decide they don't want Lottie to die. And as Travis points out, the only way she can survive is if she eats something. I like that at this point, no one's even trying to find an animal. They're not like, maybe we should go and do like one scope. Maybe there's some kind of like wintry animal who survived. Maybe we could climb a tree. Are there fish in the lake? Ice fishing in the lake. Like, there seems like there's many different options. But as Ty says, we have to find a way to save Lottie and to save ourselves. We need to eat. And we're going to have to do whatever we can to survive. So, if you remember, the girls have been assigning chores via pulling cards from a deck. This has also, very interestingly, throughout the season, clearly been something they were rigging, because they would always make sure that Crystal and Misty had to go on toilet duty as punishment for Misty, poisoning people. Oh, that little, who amongst us has, again, not poisoned some people, So it doesn't seem like a great trustworthy option, but in an interesting narrative choice that I think in the Discord, our Discord, there's been a lot of conversation about it. And I think on the internet, there's been a lot of controversy about it. They don't really show them making this choice, which I think is very interesting. So it more just kind of, you are left to add the narrative of how they got there. But it's something we've seen them do before. And we get a really good kind of riff on this, in the thing when they're trying to work out who's infected and who's not. And we get this very tense sequence. Who's going to get killed? How do you deal with that? It's so good and so atmospheric. And people pull a card and Misty is safe and Travis is safe and Shauna is safe. And honestly, Shauna, you probably should have been the sacrifice. You caused mad problems. It should have been you, babe. It should have been you, babe. But sadly for people with taste, it is Natalie who pulls the Queen of Heart cards. You hate to see it. I love Natalie. That is why I have my funny shag mullet. She inspired me to do it. I love her. And Natalie is the sacrifice. But we know Natalie still exists in the future as we know it. So this seems like an odd choice. Shauna, of course, is the executor. Loves to kill someone. Just can't help it. Just absolutely adores it. And in a very sick move, she places Jackie's necklace around Natalie's throat, which is a little heart necklace. It's very gross. We get this duality here. There's this two sides. If you are the sacrifice, you pull the Queen of Hearts card, you put on this necklace, and that kind of designates you as being the sacrifice. We can assume this is a version of what we saw in the very first episode of Yellowjackets that got everyone so hooked, of the girls running after a sacrifice. We can assume they pulled the card and they were wearing the necklace and they had to make that choice. Now, because Natalie is a bad one, she's not taking it at all. Shauna's too much of a coward to look her in the eyes. And Natalie's like, no, look me in the eyes. Do it. You're going to have to look at me while you slit my throat. Give it a try. And Shauna can't do it. Travis, in a choice that he will inevitably come to regret and I'm sure will haunt him for the rest of his life. Just horrible shit that they do in this final 15 minutes is so fucking bleak.
It's awful.
Travis causes a commotion, pushes them out of the way and lets Nat run. And this leads to one of those sequences we've had teased throughout the season in flashes.
Yes.
It's in the credit sequence. It got a lot of people talking. The survivors are chasing Natalie through the forest before we just saw them, Ty's screaming, and they turn feral. This is a turn of events.
Truly feral. It's like a zombie movie.
And I feel like that's what they were trying to establish with this blurry camera angles. They wanted to show us how far gone they were, because they do not question it. They do not for a second have any issue with trying to eat Natalie. It's happening. It's gonna happen, and she is gonna be dinner. Before we see what happens to Natalie and how she survived, which is going to break your heart, we will have to wait and see, because in a very interesting and what I think will be very important narratively turn of events, we cut to Camp Greenpine, where Shauna immediately tells Lottie none of that was real. I'm so interested. Like, is she just continuing the direct conversation where Lottie was talking about power of the wilderness? Is she talking about that entire vision that we just saw? There is a definite unreliable narrator situation here that I think is incredibly interesting and will likely lead into the next season. But we'll have to wait to see how true or not true it is, because bad things are happening. Lottie has gone full Heaven's Gate, as Misty points out, and she wants the women to drink from cups, one of which has been poisoned with phenobarbital, and that person's going to die when they drink it. Would you drink? What do you think, Jason? Would you drink from one of these cups? You're not drinking it. Thank you. I'm also not drinking it.
And by the way, Lottie, why is your every idea, well, one of us should die now? I need a better solution to stuff.
I think this is a big logical flaw in Lottie's plan. So Lottie's argument is, look, in the wilderness, we would sacrifice somebody and then we would all survive because we ate them. But also the wilderness would be happy. If we do that now, then Ty, maybe your wife won't die in a coma. Shauna, maybe you won't get arrested for this murder. Like, the wilderness can hook us up. Natalie, maybe you won't be such a loser and a drug addict anymore. Fucked up, Lottie. I don't know why. It's like not really comparable to like everything else everyone's doing. But sure. Misty, you're a murderer. Maybe you'll stop murdering. Maybe not. I'm going to say something. If that's the case, yeah, Travis already died. Why didn't that fix their problems?
Yep.
The wilderness chose Travis. Where's the logic of that? Adult Travis died. He was murdered in what looked like a hallucinatory kind of strange supernatural. One of the main supernatural glimpses that we've got. I feel like Lottie is struggling. We also now know that her therapist never existed. So she was never getting the medication that she needed for like the last few weeks. This is a very sad turn of events. Absolutely hate to see it. But also, this is like the most fucked up group of friends ever, because by the end of Lottie explaining it, like none of them are like, this sounds really bad. Like everyone's just like,
everybody's like, okay, yeah.
Like maybe we should just drink the poison Kool-Aid. I mean, come on, guys. This is Cult Leader 101.
I am surprised, honestly, that no one has said, hey, what about the other people that died? Like, aren't we good? Like, didn't we pay
how many
the rent?
times do you have to do it? Like, what is the cost? And like Travis died like recently.
Paid to me. Yeah, very recently.
You know, like and also if that was the case, Lottie, why didn't you let Nat kill herself? Like there's all these different, the logic is not there. So I believe that we can see that this is something, I think that is more of a struggle in Lottie's head right now than a reality. But, you know, someone is faring a little bit better in the wilderness. It's Coach Ben. He's feeling good. Guess what? He found Harvey's magical symbol tree. Lo and behold, big we were right. I'm calling out by name because this is the first person who I saw posit this theory. My name is Dan, who is one of our Discord users. He had posited the theory that there was an underground tunnel system and that the symbols on the trees basically marked where you could find the tunnels and the entrances to the tunnels. And I would say this is we were right that there is at least one tunnel, and I think is probably positing going towards like a proper we were right next episode. So there is a cave, Ben finds it, and it leads to some kind of tunnel system. And not only that, but someone's been living there, eating small animals. How did they find those animals? Maybe these people should be eating them instead of eating humans. Just an idea. But basically, the animal bones are there. This is probably where Harvey survived his time in the wilderness. Maybe let's just throw it out there because it's Yellowjackets. Look, maybe the bones are there for witchcraft. Maybe a witch lives there.
It kind of seems to me like there's chickens in them our woods.
I'm saying,
like, where's the meat?
That looks like chicken bones.
Where's the food? There's food out there, folks.
Maybe there's food in the tunnels. Maybe there's a little underground farm. Maybe there's some chickens be living down there, you know, like.
Underground farm is very interesting. I like that idea.
Yeah, I have seen some other really cool theories. I think in our Discord, this one's popped up a lot. The idea that perhaps the person who has been living in there, and it is nighttime Ty, who maybe was the one who was protecting Harvey and was his friend, and, you know, claimed that she didn't want him to go back, which, let's be real, we find out now, very right. Harvey should not have gone back. Bad times all around, because Harvey catches up with Nat on the frozen river, and he tells her, I'm going to take you to my secret hiding place to help you survive this insane hunting party. But, as it is wont to do, the wilderness chooses. And the ice breaks, and Harvey falls in. At first, because Natalie is a nice human being, I do truly believe that she tries to save him. But as the other girls catch up, Misty kneels down and whispers to her, if you save Harvey, they will eat you. Another life saved by Misty? Kind of. Like, not really, but kind of. Because if she didn't, like, Nat would be dead. But sadly, Harvey still dies. And it's really grim because we have to watch him drown. And Nat has to watch him drown. And we definitely understand. I feel like that is the choice that Natalie made in her life. She often talks about she didn't deserve to survive. She did things she was ashamed of. She wished that she could go back. And that, I think, is that's that moment where she let somebody die so that she could survive. And it's in a really horrific way.
I am back all the way around to this show could now be completely not supernatural.
I think too.
I think the results of trauma, starvation, intense emotional tenor could have, first of all, it did absolutely result in numerous like parallel hallucinations that did and did not intersect with other hallucinations that were going on. And I think that it is a real chance that all the stuff they think happened only happened pieces, didn't happen all the way. No one has the full picture.
That would be explained by Shauna saying it wasn't real because she doesn't remember it that way.
She doesn't remember it. And in order for them to make sense of it all, they have come up with this framing, the wilderness chose.
Exactly. And that's how the episode ends. They don't want to deal with the fact that they let Harvey die after they'd only just gotten him back. So Van declares, the wilderness chose. And that's it. Harvey will be the next meal. Of course, how Travis will feel about that is a whole different situation. But we know that him and Natalie stayed in contact as adults. So I'm sure there's probably a story there. Just another absolute bummer fucking ending. The last 3 episodes have really, they'll just big fucking destroy you.
So tell me why you think it's possible that this show could be not supernatural.
I think that the closer we get, I think there are multiple different things that could, in that situation, seem supernatural, like Lottie's visions, which we know are likely part of her having mental health struggles. Those began this kind of journey of the group into believing, well, I'd say more of a spiral actually, that there was something supernatural going on. Ty's sleepwalking, something else that can absolutely be explained away in a non-supernatural sense. But in that space of being in the wilderness, being disconnected from reality, not eating, it takes on this whole other meaning. There are multiple coincidences. Van and Ty being out and finding Harvey. That doesn't have to be supernatural. It's just that there's not a very big space and he was coming out of the tree. Things like, we've talked about this before, it's very likely that Lottie or Ty in a sleepwalking mode was the one who put the symbols around. And instead, it's about building a narrative that fits to explain away the things that they had to do. We did say in the episode where they ate Jackie, the first cannibalism episode, I felt like the photography was so intentional. It was so supposed to bring us into this mindset that the wilderness baked Jackie properly. It presented her fully cooked. But we don't know if that's really what happened. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw a different version where Van and Ty went out there and they packed the snow and they cooked her. I think that there's very interesting, unreliable narrator kind of situations occurring. And I think that Lottie fully committing to this kind of cult leader aspect of herself, which she has not done. Like this intentional community, we've made a lot of jokes about how it's a cult, but it seems like she's been pushing away from that and trying to do something positive for people. And the fact that she now is saying, hey, let's just, one of us just kill ourselves. I think that's a psychotic break that she is suffering from, more than I think, especially, like I said, the illogical nature of, well, why isn't Travis the good enough sacrifice? Yeah. Didn't the wilderness choose Adam when Shauna killed him? Like, it's not adding up. And it's really funny because last episode I was like, it's a fairy show. Like, I'm into it. Like, it's fairies. But now
100%.
I was like, I'm into it. It's fairies. It's supernatural. Somebody pointed out True Blood was about fairies. Like, why not? But now I'm actually thinking, especially imagine how horrific it will be if Coach Ben doesn't do what we expect and he doesn't just hide down there himself. Right. Imagine how terrible it will be if he leads them down there after they've killed Harvey and they find food, or they find animals, or they find whoever lived in the cabin before. Maybe they'd made that into some kind of stock storage space, you know, as people would do in caverns and caves. Maybe there's dried meats down there and they have to come to the realization that this is a choice they made. I think that could really be a harrowing way to end the season. And harrowing has been one of the big watchwords for this season. So I think the non-supernatural element is, and also very clever way to potentially end the season. Even if, you know, I think they've said this is a 5-season plan is what they have for it. And who knows when we'll see season 3 because they're on strike. But it's very interesting to kind of end in quite a final, this isn't supernatural way potentially. And then also then you have season 3 to blow that up or to go along with it or whatever else. I think it would be very interesting to have a show that is just really ingrained in this idea of how trauma can affect us. But we'll have to see next week, because next week is Succession finale and Yellowjackets finale. And for those who are watching, though we haven't been able to cover it, the Barry finale. So they're coming in strong.
Quite strong and quite, it's a bummer. It's like a bummer palooza. Folks, a bummer.
We are getting intense every day. Sunday is like the most
very
it's meant
intense.
To be relaxing, but we are getting fucking the most intense programming in a long time.
Well, up next, Nerd Out.
In today's Nerd Out, where you tell us what you love and why, or a theory you're excited to share, Maya pitches us on Guillermo del Toro's mech masterpiece, Pacific Rim. I do believe it's a masterpiece. I absolutely love this movie. I also love the sequel starring John Boyega.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Rosie. My name is Maya. I'm a longtime X-Ray Vision listener. I could listen to you guys talk about anything you want all the time, even for like things that I'm not really tuned in for. I'm always there. You guys brighten up my week all the time. So for my Nerd Out, I want to talk about 2013's Pacific Rim from Guillermo del Toro. Did not realize we were coming up on the 10th anniversary of it. But it hit me at a formative time in my life. I was working in a movie theater in between semesters for the summer. We were all excited about this movie about giant robots and giant kaiju. First of all, I love monster making. So, like, the concept and the visuals of the monsters are ridiculous to me. I love them. The big crab one, the hammerhead one, even the little baby one. I still want plushes of all of them. I think that also the reason I love this movie so much is the concept of drift compatibility, which I think is one of the coolest sci-fi concepts of the last 10 years of movie making. I've probably spent too many dates talking about it, but the fact that you can only pilot these giant robots by sharing the neural load with another person, rather it be familial, platonic, romantic, the fact that you have to have that connection to share the load is really beautiful. I think this movie talks a lot about human connection and having faith in each other, and how we can achieve things. And as someone who doesn't always see the good in everyone, I think that's why I love this movie so much. Not to mention the fact that the score is by Ramin Djawadi, I hope I pronounced that right, who also produced the Game of Thrones score, Westworld score. If I ever need to get shit done, I'm playing that full blast, especially the theme song. A great cast: Jax Teller, aka Charlie Hunnam, at the height of his Sons of Anarchy phase, Rinko Kinkuchi, Ron Perlman, Charlie Day, and then Idris Elba giving the "we're canceling the apocalypse" speech. What more can you want from your sci-fi movie? I'm not going to mention the sequel, even though I was excited to see that John Boyega was in it, but we're not going to mention it. But yeah, I want everyone to watch the movie, rewatch the movie. I think it needs so much more love. Thanks.
Thanks, Maya. If you have theories or passions you want to share, hit us up at xray@crooked.com. Instructions in the show notes.
Well, that's it for us, Rosie. Anything to plug? Plug.
I'm going to plug a TV show on Amazon Freevee called Primo. You can't really plug it because you're on strike, but it's really good.
That's right.
It's absolutely delightful. You can watch all the episodes now. It's hilarious. It's funny. Jason absolutely put a Borgullet reference in there for the Star Wars fans. Shay is obviously also like a huge pop culture person, so if that's why you listen to us, you'll love it. But it's really just a great family drama. Mike Schur, the icon behind things like Parks and Rec, so you're really in good hands. Absolutely delightful. The 5 uncles are miraculous, and you will fall in love and you will have a favorite. And it's just a wonderful show, so you should go and watch it.
Aw, catch the next episode on Friday, May 26th. This is the episode of X-Ray Vision. To catch up on some Star Wars, including Star Wars Visions Volume 2 and Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the game that is wrestling for time in our video game queues against Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
The way my life has been torn in two by those two games, like, I want to play them both at the same time, and it is impossible. It is just absolutely bonkers, but I'm very excited to talk about it because it is, I think, a far superior game to the original. I'm loving playing
I agree.
it. Yeah, it's great. Subscribe on YouTube to X-Ray Vision, where you can watch full episodes of the show, like this one. And check out our Discord that we mention a lot because it's full of great people and we hang out in there, and there's conversations from Star Wars to Survivor. It's just absolutely great.
5-star reviews, 5-star ratings. We love them. We got to have them. You got to give them to us. Here is one from DKenDeezy, 23. Market move. For a show that has been very Marvel and Star Wars heavy, it's fun when a podcast covers something really different. Market moves is my favorite segment, and I'm sad that it'll end when Succession ends in a few weeks. DKenDeezy, 23.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you next time.